said that Charlemagne had slaves.
Right,
There you go.
because they were bad Muslims, right?
Some of them were bad.
So the 4 rightly guided caliphs were all bad Muslims. Bingo. Walid, is Muhammad the example you should follow? Including when he owned slaves?
Yes.
There you go. Do you condemn the Arab slave trade that took Africans into the Middle East as sex slaves? So he condemns Muhammad's teaching.
I've actually read up on Janissaries. and-
Were they a slave army?
Yeah, they were.
There you go. So slavery wasn't abolished. What was the difference in method?
What was the difference in method?
Yeah.
First of all, strategy in battle. We don't attack women and children.
Yes, you
we
do.
Don't, no, we don't. Tell
What
me
did
when.
Muhammad do?
Tell me when.
So Muhammad, in one of your hadiths, Muhammad was asked a question on a raiding party and he said, shall we attack the camp at night?
Muhammad said.
Listen, one of the
Go on, go on.
companions said to the Prophet, shall we attack the camp at night? The camp of the Quraysh, the camp of the pagans. And he was asked this question, shall we attack the camp at night when we will endanger their women and children? And Muhammad's reply was, they are from amongst them. In other words, we can attack the camp at night, even
That's
though
a
women and
huge
children
jump.
will be put in
That's a
danger.
huge jump. That's a huge
That's
jump.
hadith.
That's an assumption. You've just interpreted that based on your assumption.
What about this one?
I have one hadith that will refute what you just said.
Go on. One hadith fight another
Muhammad
hadith. Let's do
sallallahu
that.
alaihi wasallam said there are rules and conditions of war. No killing women, no killing children, no killing the elderly, no destroying sanctuaries of other people and animals and trees and plants.
So Muhammad broke
You have
all
these
of those rules.
rules? You have these
Yeah,
rules?
it's called the chivalric code, and it's better than what Muhammad
Where
said.
is it in the Bible?
So listen.
Where is it in the Bible?
No, brother. Let's have a conversation
Go on.
where you talk and I listen, and I talk and
versa.
you listen. Because if we don't have that kind of conversation, it descends into a shouting match.
All right, then.
Now, do you want a shouting match or a conversation?
I want a conversation, but I only got 2 minutes.
Let's be clear.
All right.
Muhammad broke all of the rules that he just mentioned. What did he do to the Kaaba? He destroyed the sanctuary of the pagans. So he's just quoted a hadith saying that Muhammad said in a rule of war, you don't destroy the sanctuary, you don't destroy religious sanctuaries. Muhammad destroyed religious sanctuaries, so according to his hadith, Muhammad is a bad man. There is a hadith where Muhammad has women captured. Let me finish.
Is it like a time thing or?
We can time it if you want.
I don't want to time it. I just
Right,
wanna
well, if you're so
respond
let me
to what you're
finish.
saying.
Let me finish. There's a hadith where one of Muhammad's companions in a raiding party fires an arrow in front of women and children who are fleeing so he can capture them as slaves. And then they rape them, and Muhammad says that you shouldn't stop yourself from ejaculating into their vaginas. That's a hadith in his religion. I'm going to prove you wrong.
This is a lie.
So,
Show me
how
the
would you
hadith.
reply to that? Because your hadiths have just condemned your
This is a
prophet.
lie.
First of all, you have to prove. Yeah. First of all, you have to prove to me.
Can we pull up
about
the
this-
hadith about attacking
Go
the
ahead.
camp?
Go ahead. Secondly, not the attacking camp bit. The last bit you just said.
Okay.
Firing an
Yeah,
arrow
I can
Fine,
you?
please.
I can do that right now.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you want to hold that mic a bit?
In the meantime, you can say whatever.
All right. Well, first of all, the rules of conduct in war.
Stop being rude to him.
The rules. Right. The rules of conduct in war are basically the rules come from God. Okay. Allah told the Prophet to destroy the idols in his house. You know, the house of God.
Yeah.
Kaaba. Other than the house of God, what other sanctuary has Muhammad destroyed? You can try that after, you know what I said. Another thing, the women and the children thing, you said that he broke the rules and attacked women and children and raped them. Yeah, he's gonna find it now. Look, you know, during the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never attacked women, children, elderly. He never broke any of these rules that you're claiming he broke. I'd love to see the proof of that. After the Prophet's time and after the 4 blessed leaders, after the 4 caliphs, everyone else was doing everything based on their own agenda. They weren't special in any way. They were humans and they were fallible like we were. They all made mistakes and they all broke rules. But Prophet Muhammad never done that, and I'd love to see, you know, the proof of that. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to show to you that women can become the victims of slavery. Okay. So
Slavery isn't killing women.
no. They are that. If you are attacking a community, and taking women as slaves, then they are the victims of war. Agreed?
No, hold on.
Listen.
So is capturing people the same as killing them? Is that what you're trying to tell me right now?
I'm saying.
Capturing and killing are the same
So
thing.
are you trying to justify slavery?
No, I'm trying to say to you, capturing and killing aren't the same
Well,
thing.
well, let me ask you a
I'm trying
direct
to
question.
differentiate the
Is
two.
taking a woman as a slave due to jihad acceptable in Islam?
Look, we believe, first of all, the connotations of slavery that you're using is different to what we believe.
So answer the
It's
question.
servitude. Secondly,
Answer the
yes,
question.
I'll accept everything comes from God.
So you're acceptable with taking women as slaves in Islam?
In what context?
As sexual slaves?
Sexual slaves.
Yeah.
If God allows me to do it, who are you to say I'm not allowed to do it?
Right. So there's your problem. This
the
is
problem?
why. No,
Why is
wait.
it- why is it wrong?
Right.
Can you
So
explain to me why it's wrong?
so here's why it's wrong. Because what it does is it says that there are degradations of humanity. That some humans are better than other humans. That's why it's wrong. And that's why, no, I'm going to talk now, because you've talked.
I'd like to respond.
I just wanted, so you can see that I'm not making it up. Yeah?
Wait, hold on.
Let me
Before
finish.
you make the-
Let me
before you make
finish.
the
No, we're getting, our conversation's going to
There's
break
one
down
quote,
into
I
a shouting
promise
match.
you. It'll take 10 seconds.
No. Our conversation's going to break down into a shouting match if we interrupt one another. So I wanna point out.
Can I see the hadith?
So no, I'm going to quote Dr. Abdul Latif Mushtahari of Azhar University. Azhar University. Azhar University. I'm going to come to the hadith. I'm going to come to the hadith. Listen, Islam does not prohibit slavery, but retains it for two reasons. The first is war, in which the captive is either killed or enslaved. Provided that the war is not between Muslims. It is not acceptable to enslave the violators or the offenders if they are Muslims. Only non-Muslims may be enslaved or killed. The second reason is the sexual propagation of slaves, which would generate more slaves for their owners. This is a scholar from Azhar University, and he has just said that you treat non-Muslims different to Muslims when it comes to slavery, which means that there is a denigration of humanity within Islam.
Now can I respond?
No, one final point. And Muslims throw out red herrings. Oh, it's his opinion. This is a ulama from Azhar University. Azhar University is one of the highest establishments of Islamic learning in the Islamic world. Go on, you're going to reply.
I think he'd like to say something. Go
You
ahead.
want me to reply?
Yeah, you can reply if you like, but I
Yeah,
also want to
okay.
say something.
I can address this. First of all, this is an opinion of a person. That's number one. Number two, in your Bible, it refers to slaves. It says that you can have slaves, and if you beat your slaves with a rod, and the slave dies in the first day, then you are punishable. If he does not, if he lives for a day, then that slave, you have nothing to do with it. You can beat him if he dies.
sin, basically.
If he dies the second day, you have nothing to pay for. This is in your Bible, not of an opinion of a person. Where is the
An
hadith?
opinion of a person
Let me
from
finish.
Azhar.
I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, you
No,
were
no.
interrupting
No,
me
no, I'm
continuously.
taking-
No.
I'm taking him.
You were
I'm
interrupting
taking
me.
his place.
That's really unfortunate
No.
because you interrupted me
Sorry.
continuously,
No.
and
Because
now you're
you-
upset
no,
that
no,
I'm
no.
interrupting
I'm
you.
not upset with you.
Right.
Can I respond?
You're lying. There is no hadith.
So we're going to come to the hadiths. We're going to come to the hadiths. I've quoted your scholars.
No.
Now let me quote Ibn Ishaq. Now let me quote Ibn
Why are you
Ishaq.
quoting scholars rather than showing
What?
us
Now,
the
now, red herring, red herring.
the Bible.
He's already said he agrees with slavery, so it's not like I'm lying.
No.
That's not the point. You claim you
So,
have hadith.
yeah, we're going to
You
come
could
to the
read it.
hadiths. We're going to come to the
You said
hadiths.
that earlier, but you still haven't.
Ibn Ishaq, page 466, talking about the apostle. Then the apostle sent Zayd bin al-Ansari, brother of Abdu Ashal, with some of the captive women of the Quran to Najd, and he sold them for horses and weapons. For horses and weapons. This is the supposed greatest example in the world,
Unlike
and he's
beating with a rod
selling
and dying.
women and children
In the Bible.
for horses and weapons. Now, to address this brother's
Unlike
point,
30,000
now notice he's
virgins.
complaining, but he'll complain when I
Virgins and
interrupt
he
him,
took them as slaves.
because that's what Muslims do all the time.
And they killed.
in this corner. So,
What's the
we
narration?
Christians
What's the
follow
narration?
the New Testament, not the Old Testament. All of his arguments are from the Old Testament, not the New Testament.
Like
So I'll
New
answer his
Revised.
question with a question. Where does Jesus own a slave?
Where does Jesus abolish slaves in the Bible? Where does he say no slaves in the Bible? Where does Jesus, in his time, he saw thousands of slaves. Where does he free them?
Yeah.
Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
Yeah.
he ordered the freedom of slaves.
He sold slaves.
No.
Muhammad was a
You
slave
are a
trader.
liar. You are a liar.
I've just quoted Ibn Ishaq. Is it Ibn Ishaq
Show me
a
the
liar?
narration.
Is
Show me the
Ibn
narration.
Ishaq a liar?
You are a liar.
Answer this question.
You are a liar.
Is Ibn Ishaq a liar?
You are a liar.
No, I quoted Ibn Ishaq.
You are a
Is
liar.
Ibn Ishaq a liar?
Show me the narration.
Answer the question.
No, show me the narration.
Answer the question.
I cannot.
Is Ibn Ishaq a liar?
Once you show me the
Answer
narration.
the question. Is Ibn Ishaq a liar?
Are you in a repeat mode now?
Yes,
No,
I am.
I cannot.
Answer the question. Is Ibn Ishaq a liar? Do you believe in Ibn Ishaq as a liar?
No. What
Do you believe Ibn Ishaq? Amazingly, suddenly the Muslims, none of them know who Ibn Ishaq is.
Give me the narration.
Ibn Ishaq is the biographer of Muhammad.
What do you mean by
Ishaq has an
So-
opinion, it's true.
So,
There's no biography of Muhammad.
As if
So-
he's infallible.
We don't have a biography
I
of
will
Muhammad
respond to what you said earlier, and then I have to go.
هو
You
المشكلة
said
يظن
something
إن
about
في طريقته biography. There's
the
no biography.
capturing of women.
yeah.
That's evil in your opinion. And
Could you,
asked
could you hold that for us, bro?
Show me the narration. The chain of narration all the way to Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. يا أخي الكريم.
Sorry?
أعطاك حديث.
What?
Yeah, it's not hadith. I agree.
Yeah, I'm going to provide the evidence. Going to
There is no
provide the
chain
evidence.
of narration.
I just need to find it.
And they are-
It's amazing that you can't even say whether you think Ibn Ishaq. Do you know who Ibn Ishaq is?
I care less. I
Do you know who
Islam.
Ibn Ishaq is?
I care less.
They care less.
I care less.
Whenever their
When-
sources embarrass them, they chuck them under the bus. We see it every week in the corner.
I care.
Every. So you're saying Ibn Ishaq is a liar?
I say you're a liar.
No, Ibn
You
Ishaq
ignore
is a
all the
liar.
Christian scholars.
So-
You go by your own
I
mind.
know
What are you
you're
looking
a liar.
for? Trading black slaves?
Show me the narration. Show me the chain.
Can we-
Trading
can-
black slaves?
Let's pull up black slaves.
Sahih Muslim.
So
Sahih Muslim.
they say that we're lying when we say that their prophet practiced slavery and trading in slaves. Is Sahih Bukhari a liar?
No, that's Sahih Muslim.
Sahih al-Muslim, is he a liar?
That's
Sahih al-Muslim reads this.
Read it.
There came a slave and pledged allegiance to Allah's apostle. May peace be upon him. Now bearing in mind this means he became a Muslim. He ran away and became a Muslim. And look how Muhammad, the slave trader, dealt with him on the migration. He, the holy prophet, did not know that he was a slave. Then there came his master and demanded him back, whereupon Allah's apostle said, "Sell him to me." And he bought him for 2 black slaves, and he did not afterwards take allegiance from anyone until he had asked whether he was a slave. So Muhammad sold black slaves, and he said
Let him say what he wants to say.
that selling 2 black slaves was worth this other Muslim. So in other words, that's the economy that Muhammad established. An Arab Muslim
He
is
established it?
better. Yes, that's Muhammad. Right.
established
Now tell us.
this
Wait, 1 second. Am I lying? Is Sahih al-Muslim a liar? Is Sahih al-Muslim a liar?
Where is the source?
Look,
Give me the source.
Sahih al-Muslim 1602.
I'm
There you go. No.
I'm not a liar
Look,
like you.
you're a liar.
No, I'm not
Is
a liar
Sahih
like
al-Muslim
you.
a liar?
I'm not a liar like you.
Is he a Muslim?
Let me see the chain of narration. We go all the way to the Prophet's time.
Always,
We don't lie
always
like
they
you.
change the goalposts.
No.
You literally.
Let me see the chain of
What?
narration.
What's that? A website
I
there?
don't
Read the
care.
Arabic and call.
Let me see. Let me see the chain of narration. Then I can tell you.
Suna.com.
Sunnah.com.
Suna.com. That's our source. Go on, how would you reply to that? A reply to
First of
that.
all-
We've shown that Muhammad sold slaves.
Okay, look. First of all, you have to understand the time period that Prophet Muhammad was in a time where slavery was rife. It was
لا يا ابن
everywhere.
الحلال مو بصحيح كذا الكلام لا مو كذا شوف now let me now elaborate a little bit
Is Muhammad our example for today?
I'm not talking about anybody I wanna
Is Muhammad our example today?
No, I want to respond to
No,
your
is
lie.
Muhammad our example to today? Oh, but when you interrupt, you complain. You interrupt me continuously and you complain.
There's nothing working
Is Muhammad our example today? So let me talk to you.
Talk.
Because I'm just going to keep interrupting him because he continuously interrupts me.
I'm not
Is Muhammad our example today? So the argument that he did this in the past is irrelevant if he is our example. So we should have slaves today, right? So Muhammad isn't our example then? Go on.
Don't go left and right, bro.
Go on. No. I'm following a
Muhammad
very
is-
clear logic.
Muhammad is our example today, tomorrow, and in the past. His time period was very different to ours. There aren't slaves here for us to trade on. There's no slaves here.
Should there be?
But no, we don't believe in slavery. We don't believe slavery is halal. We don't believe you are better than another man. We don't believe in
So
none of
was
that.
Muhammad committing sin when he had slaves then, if it's not halal?
How do you know he had slaves?
We literally just
No, no, no,
quoted
no.
your hadith.
What you read was that he traded 2 black slaves.
So he was a
Muslim
slave trader.
No. How do you know they belong to him?
Okay, can we pull up the ones where were they his right to sell?
Listen, I'll ask you some questions. Ask me
Okay, all right. Can you
Just
sell?
answer my question.
Right. How do I know that they're his? You ask that question, I'll answer. He sold them, and if he didn't sell his own property, that means he was selling someone else's property, and so we can surmise that they were owned by him.
Fair enough. Now.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, no one really knows whether they were his or not. I was just saying that. But the point I'm trying to make is that in a time where you're surrounded by slaves, and that's the currency for some people, the only way to abolish it is by freeing them. And the only way to free them is by buying them. How else can you can't take somebody else, I can't take your car away from you right now. I want to free the car, I'd have to buy it off you first, and then free it. And that's what
that doesn't make
Now the
sense.
2 black ones, the 2 black ones, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like lying. The 2 black slaves that hadith you just showed me right now, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
On top of that,
Do you
the
wanna
fact that he sold 2 for the price of 1.
One Arab
is
for
another
2.
thing.
Which implies
How do
black
you-
was inferior.
Because every time the hadiths want to point out someone's black, they say it. Why do they make a point of saying black slaves? What's
No,
the point?
not every time. Because there are times
They
where
don't say
the
black
person is
slaves.
black and they don't mention the fact he's black.
No, they
Like
don't say
Bilal.
black slaves.
They don't say black is
No, no, no.
Bilal
Did
is
you know
black.
he was black?
Yeah.
Why?
They've mentioned it.
Exactly.
But they don't always say it. You said they
Exactly.
always say it.
Sometimes
No.
they say raisin, don't they? Raisin head.
No.
Raisin.
Right, no. So, brother,
think-
What are you reading, bro?
brother,
No.
Muhammad said that you should follow the Caliph even if he is an Ethiopian with the head of a raisin. That's another one of your hadiths.
Yeah.
Your prophet was racist to black people and traded in
Oh,
black
hang on.
slaves, bro.
How is that racist? If I call you blue eyes, is that racist?
No.
No,
It's a description.
no,
Now, he described a person
as raisin head.
raising it. Okay, what does that mean to
If
you?
I
What
said
does that
to
mean
you-
maybe
if
it's
I
racist
said
to
to
you because you might be, I don't know,
No,
inherently
no.
racist.
Wait.
I don't know.
Inherently
Let me ask you,
I'm just saying,
brother.
how do you know it's
What's
racist?
your name, bro?
My name is Ali.
Ali, you seem like a nice person. My name is Bob. Ali, you in your heart, the fact that you want to reject slavery already makes you better than Muhammad.
No, it doesn't.
It really
Muhammad
does.
was the first man on earth to abolish
No, he
slavery
didn't
from a
abolish
whole
it.
peninsula.
He didn't.
Tell me anyone else that has
Muslims
abolished
practiced
Hold on,
slavery for 1400 years without
Did Jesus
interruption.
What kind of
stop slavery? Did Jesus abolish
You
slavery?
speak so much.
I'm
as
going to
you
give
know.
you an example.
wait,
Now
wait.
you asked me to give you an example. The hadith, it's in Sahih al-Bukhari, and this is it, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, that while he was sitting with Allah's apostle, he said, "O Allah's apostle, we get female captives as our share of booty, and we are interested in their prices. What is your opinion about coitus interruptus?" This is talking about ejaculating inside them. The Prophet said, "Do you really do that? It is better for you not to do it. No soul which Allah has destined to exist will surely come into existence."
I'm
So
confused. What
Muhammad
does that
is saying, so you wanted what kind of slavery? Sex slavery.
That was the original
You just,
argument.
I'm confused. Can you explain to me what that says again?
So basically what happens is they've won a war, they've captured female slaves, and they want to know about the prices of the slaves. And they want to know if coitus interruptus is allowed because it will affect the prices of the women. I.e., a pregnant slave is worth less than a non-pregnant slave. And so Muhammad says, don't do coitus interruptus, which means what he's saying is
Don't have sex.
ejaculate. No. Coitus interruptus means that you withdraw before the point of ejaculation.
Right, yeah.
So what he's saying is ejaculate inside them. That's your prophet. That's your
Okay.
great example.
Now
What does that mean to you?
What that means, it means that Muhammad is a disgusting individual.
No. Before you
He is
go to
not
that-
a moral
No,
example.
If he says to his people, don't pull out, continue to have sex, have children with these women, what does that mean to you?
It means that Muhammad values these women so little that he allows these women to be captured as slaves,
I think it would
used
be
as
worse
sex
to have
toys.
sex with women and pull out. Don't you think? That would basically mean
Talk about missing the elephant in the room. We're talking about the sexual slavery of women, and he's trying to argue about the best way to rape them.
No, wait.
you said. Okay, let me rephrase what you said. And you told me if I'm right. You said Muhammad told his people to not.
Do coitus interruptus.
Yeah, to basically ejaculate in them. Have
Yes.
children with these women.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that is worse, far worse, than him telling these people to just have sex with them but don't have kids, do whatever you want, sell them. You think that's worse than that?
I am saying.
It's A worse than B.
Right, yes, I am saying that each of these things is
So
a.
to settle
Wait,
down
bro.
with a woman, have children with them, is worse than just using them and abusing them.
So what I'm
So
saying.
now Bob is basically saying that using and abusing is a better form of taking care of your captured people rather than actually settling down with them.
So let me just deal with that point.
That's a good way to put it.
Let me just deal with that point because this is what we can see as clutching straws. Hold your mic, bro. This is what we see as clutching the straws. Like no one heard me say.
I mean, I could respond to it.
Wait,
properly, but I
one
just wanted to
second.
make that point.
One second. This is how desperate he is. To try and make his prophet look good. To try and make his prophet look good, he's trying to make me look worse. But the point is, we've got a camera and a microphone, bro, and no one heard me say these words. What you have put into my mouth. I condemn slavery. You have tried to justify the raping of slaves by saying, oh, well, it would be worse to rape them in another way. That is what Muhammad has done to you. That is what following Muhammad has done to you.
All right, 1 second.
It gets worse.
Can I
Let me
respond
finish.
then
No.
properly to
Let
what
me
you
finish. No, you had your chance. You should have used it. This is what the Quran says in Surah 24, Ayah 33. But force not your maids into prostitution when they desire chastity, in order that you make a gain in the goods of this life. But if anyone compels them, yet after such compulsion is Allah oft forgiving, most merciful. So Allah is saying, don't prostitute your slaves, but if you do, I'll forgive you anyway. It's just right there. What does he say? You read it. You read it.
Which verse is it? 34?
Underlined.
Okay. But force not your maids to prostitution when they desire chastity. So when they don't want to have sex,
Yep.
don't force them.
Agreed. That is what the Quran is saying.
In order that you may make a gain in the goods of this life.
Who's the you?
You, the men.
The men who are doing it.
The men who are
Right,
doing it.
carry on.
But if anyone compels them, yet after such compulsion is Allah of forgiving, most merciful. If anyone compels them to do what?
To be prostitutes. To be prostitutes, yes.
If anyone apart from those men or those men themselves.
Those men are the ones compelling them.
Okay, so there you go.
So do you not see that Allah is forgiving people who are forcing slaves into prostitution?
No. You think, look.
Go on, what do you think it
was
means?
Chastity. Prostitution in terms of what? You think those men were allowing their slaves to sleep with everyone else?
It says
But
prostitution.
Islam is not allowed.
It says
You know
prostitution right there.
But you have to understand the context of Islam. We don't allow prostitution.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. We aren't even allowed to sleep with women that aren't from our right hand. So our wives, or like the Quran
No.
says, our captured women. Now,
So, exactly.
all right. Now,
We
wait,
can
wait,
sleep
wait,
with our
wait,
captured women.
We can sleep with the one we've captured. I can't.
There you go.
No, you've misunderstood what I'm trying to say though. Try to understand where I'm coming from. If the Quran says you're not allowed to have sex with women other than your wives
And your slaves.
and your slaves.
So it's sex slavery.
Wait, okay. Other than these two, you're not allowed to have sex outside of that, right?
So we are talking
Now-
about sex slavery then.
Whoa. Can I just finish my point?
Yeah.
Now, this verse, what you're talking about in this verse is prostitution. Do you realize that? This
Yes.
verse is talking about prostituting your slave.
Yeah.
Now, he's saying if you prostitute your slave,
Yeah.
then what do you call it? You can't. You'll be forgiven.
Yes.
For actions. Maybe that's for other reasons, but it's not for me to go around and sleep with, other guys as slaves. I'm not allowed to do that. So you have to understand where it's come from. That is for the men themselves who are the masters of those servants.
Bro, do you want to own a slave?
No,
Why not?
I'm not in that time period.
No, that's not answering the question.
I mean, look,
There
I
are
don't
slaves
believe in
today.
slavery. Look,
You don't believe in slavery.
I don't believe in slavery.
And
but
this
you've
is
misunderstood the slavery.
thank you.
in Islam.
Right, you've spoke.
You've made it the same as the one in Christianity.
So hold on one second. So what we've seen is you're better than Muhammad because Muhammad believed and practiced slavery. You've already testified
in
to
a
the
time
fact
of
that the
war.
Quran teaches sexual slavery. You've already testified to that. There's no point denying it. We got you on camera. Literally, we caught you on camera saying it. So one second. So you're better than your prophet. And I'm saying to you, bro, if you don't want to do what Muhammad says you can do, then what you're saying is that you want someone better than Muhammad. And that person is Jesus. Because Jesus lived in a time of slavery and he never owned a slave. Jesus said, one second. Let me actually read you what the Bible says about, what the New Testament says about slavery.
Find what you're looking for. Why you're doing that? I'm gonna say something, right? Look, the slavery thing that you want to speak about, the sex slavery that you call it,
In your Quran,
it's not sex slavery though.
you
call it sex slavery.
literally said, you literally said you can have, you said you can have sex with your slaves. You said that.
You have ignorantly so.
It's all right, bro. I've got it.
You've misunderstood it. What is slavery to you? What is it?
When one person owns another person,
Yeah, in what sense?
that they can sell them like Muhammad did.
Is there rules of conduct for those people?
No, you've asked me what the definition of slavery is. I've given it to you. When I can sell another human being for a price, that is my definition of slavery.
Alright, look, at the end of the day,
What's your definition?
my definition of servitude? first
Right.
of all, not slavery.
So you can sell them.
slavery.
Can you sell them?
Servitude.
Can you sell them?
Yeah, I think we're allowed to.
Yeah, there you go. I think we're allowed to. There you go.
Oh yeah, look, you have to understand the context of it, innit?
Can't you hear yourself, bro? On one hand, you're saying, I don't want to own a slave. But then in the next
look.
breath, you're saying we can.
I'm telling you, a nation like this, where everyone's going, you know what I mean, crazy, killing each other, taking over each other's homes and lands or whatever. In that context, what do you do with the people who you've just beat in a battle? What happens to their women? What happens to them? If we leave them all and allow them to go out into the wild, they will get raped or killed, right?
They'll get
they come
raped
under our-
or killed.
Yes.
So what we'll do is we'll rape them ourselves.
No, now you're putting words into my mouth.
That's
What I'm
exactly
saying-
what we're talking about.
You're putting words in my mouth. What I'm saying is, the women that we've captured, and the children that we've captured, and the men that we've captured, we take care of them. There are rules of conduct to these people.
By having sex
we
with
clothe them, we feed them, and if they wish, it's consent-based, by the way. I'm not even sure if you know that. If the women want to have sex with us, we have a grace period. After 1 month or something, we're allowed to have sex with them. If there weren't no grace period, then I'd understand where you're coming from about how Muslims just want to rape and kill women. I'd understand. But there's a grace period.
But even
Can you
that's wrong.
explain- Can you explain why there's a grace period to have sex with women?
So,
What kind of religion would allow, would tell you to have a grace period?
Yep,
if
yep.
they were for,
okay, are you
raping
done?
women.
So let's be clear. When Muhammad captured the land of the Quraysh, the Jewish tribes, Safiya was one of the captured women. Muhammad had sex with her within a week of that capturing. So much for the grace period. The point is, so there you go. There you go. So Muhammad, the greatest example, does exactly the opposite of what he's saying. Muhammad had sex with Safiya, a captured Jewish woman, within a week of her capture. So this grace period, it's utter rubbish. It's complete baloney. And what we've got, and here's the difference between your religion and my religion, is that my religion applies at all times and in all places. Christ said, love one another, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, as a neighbor, would I want to be taken as a slave?
Muhammad
No.
does the same thing.
You asked, no, one second.
Muhammad does the same thing.
1 second. Muhammad permits you to have slaves. Christ commands you to love your neighbor as yourself. I don't want to be taken as a slave, so does that mean that I should own a slave? If I was a slave, I would want to be set free. So if I own a slave, what do? You set them free. So Christ teaches a maxim that leads to the abolishment of slavery.
But
That's
he's never
why-
abolished one slave.
That's why
30 years of ministry.
That's
one
why-
slave was free.
That's why when Paul sent back a slave to his master, he said, receive him not as a slave, but as a brother. Not as a slave. So the New Testament does abolish slavery.
Where?
I literally just quoted to you.
Paul sent a slave to Jesus.
Yes? No? Onesimus?
To who?
I'll read it to you. I'll read it to you. It's in the book, letter of Philemon.
The funny thing is, Muhammad also tells his people to be good to their neighbor. But that doesn't mean that Jesus is better than Muhammad or Muhammad better than Jesus. They just have good teaching. Now, you have made a lot of claims, Bob. You've said that, what do you call it? Oh shit, man. I forgot what I was going to say. Listen, I haven't really got that much.
So while you're finding that, you wanted me to show you where in the scriptures slavery was abolished. I'm going to give you an example of where slavery was abolished.
Is this
In the letter of Philemon, Paul, writing to Onesimus, says, perhaps this is the reason he was separated from you for a while, so that you might have him back forever, no longer as a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother. No longer as a slave. Even Paul is better than Muhammad, because Paul said no longer as a slave, but Muhammad sold 2 black slaves and gave advice about trading in slaves. There is a fundamental difference between me, even this brother who doesn't want to own slaves, Paul, who set slaves free, Jesus, who never owned a slave, and Muhammad, who owned slaves, permitted the rape of slaves, and traded in slaves himself. Yeah.
So first of all, you made a statement based on Paul's letter. Now, that slave that was sent to this other guy, right? How do you know his treatment after he was sent to this other guy? You said he was being treated as a brother initially, but you don't know what comes after that. Whereas Muhammad, on the other hand, has freed multitudes of slaves. One perfect example, Bilal. He freed Bilal and gave him a raised position. He allowed him to be the man who does the adhan. In your belief, was there ever a time period during Jesus' ministry or just after he, where a slave could become a king, or a slave could become, you know what I mean, something much higher than he would have been?
No, I'll answer that.
Answer that.
One of the popes of the church was born and raised a slave. He gained his freedom and became the pope of the church.
When?
Was in the first 400 years. I don't know exactly which
Fair
one.
enough, fair enough. And that means they're just good-hearted people, innit? But look, the thing is, in Islam, slavery was abolished.
No, it wasn't.
It was abolished.
Wait. Islam has practiced slavery for 1400 years. When was it abolished exactly? What year was it abolished?
Look, your understanding of slavery and my understanding of slavery aren't the same thing.
When was it abolished?
This is why we're having misunderstandings.
What year was slavery abolished in Islam?
During Muhammad's time.
So why did Muslims take... What about the Janissaries?
The Janissaries.
What about... The Janissaries were
I know who they
kidnapped.
are. I know who they were.
Were they slaves?
They were captured people, kids. They were captured.
By
and
Muslims,
trained.
Christian children?
Look, no one forced Islam on them though. They were captured.
Yes, it was forced on them.
Islam was forced on who?
Yes, it was forced
You
on the
have proof of that?
Janissaries.
You have proof of that?
Yes. The testimonies of the children that it fought to escape the Janissaries and did so because they were being forced into Islam. You see, the problem
No,
is,
Listen. I've actually read up on Janissaries. And
were they a slave army?
Yeah, they were.
There you go. So slavery wasn't abolished.
It wasn't a slave army. Like, look,
Were they
slavery
slaves?
you're talking about with the Janissaries and with the Arabs, that is nothing compared to the Atlantic slave trade.
What about the Mamelukes?
Huh?
What about the Mamelukes?
The Mamluks were slaves too.
There you go. So slavery wasn't abolished. He
the
keeps
word
saying
slave-
Muhammad abolished slavery, and then he admits that Muslims practice slavery. And he himself says that slavery is permitted. He said that.
The point I'm trying to make, Bob.
How
is-
could
Look,
did you say that
Muhammad
slavery is
abolished-
permitted?
Muhammad
We'll do a
abolished it.
flashback.
We don't allow prostitution.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. we aren't even allowed to sleep with women that aren't from our right hand. So our wives, or like the Quran
No.
says, our captured women. Now,
So, exactly.
All right. Now,
We
wait,
can
wait,
sleep
wait,
with our
wait,
captured women.
we can sleep with the one we've captured. I can't.
There you go.
Muhammad abolished it. But people continue doing what they wish to do.
Did you
After
say?
his time period, you know?
Did you say?
Whose is this, man?
I'll take it. There you go. There's your mic.
What I said was Muhammad abolished it. Muhammad abolished it. Just because people after him did it, it doesn't mean it wasn't abolished. What happened? Muhammad. Yeah, I took off. Oh, sorry, but I'm about to go now. For 1 minute.
They might be won by a woman.
Yeah, so people acted on their own desires after Muhammad, with their own agendas. But during Muhammad's time period, slavery was abolished.
Right, bro.
Not slavery in the sense of going out
And taking
buy
people by
slaves.
force.
No, going out to the slaves that we had in Islam weren't people that we went out all the way to Africa to buy and capture and kidnap. We weren't like that.
Yes, you were.
No, okay.
What were the Janissaries again?
Bro, the Janis. Alright, how about this? I'll tell you exactly what they are.
You know, shall I tell you? Shall I tell you what?
I'll tell you exactly
Brother,
what they
shall I tell you why you're struggling?
are. I'm not struggling.
Here's why you're struggling.
I'm not struggling.
Right?
Can I explain the Janissaries?
No. Here's why you're struggling. You're struggling because you don't want to accept what your conscience is telling you, that Muhammad was an evil man
No, I'm
who
just not
taught
that good
evil
with words, man.
things.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. And so you're struggling because you want to free Muhammad from his evil actions by saying he wasn't a slaver, when all the evidence says that he was. You're trying to free Muhammad from establishing the Islamic slavery when you yourself know that that's exactly why Muslims practice slavery.
Slavery was existing before
Bob,
Islam came
Bob.
thousands of years.
Look, any time period where Muslims have had slaves was
Islam
after
encouraged
a
people
battle.
to free
Yeah.
It
slaves.
was after
That's
a
what
battle
Islam did.
with
to be
whoever it
honest.
was that we were facing. With the Janissaries, for example, it was against the Greeks mostly, and the Serbs, right, and the Slavs. When we conquered,
Does that make
when
it
the Turks-
okay?
wait, when the Turks conquered, you done the same thing. I don't know why you're talking about. Is it okay? Does it make it okay? It's
Do you
not
know when
about-
Christians abolished slavery?
It's not about. Look,
They
the
were
point
doing
Do you know
it
when
with the
Christians
Bible.
abolished slavery?
They were allowed to
Do you know when Christians abolished slavery?
I don't think you don't have. Go on, tell me.
Right. The Christians abolished slavery the first time in the 5th century.
Who did it?
Christians.
Who specifically?
The Byzantine Empire.
Byzantines.
Slavery was abolished.
The Byzantines, who had slaves up until the 14th century,
No.
had abolished it. Are you sure about that?
No. Slavery was abolished in the 5th century. The thing about slavery is, as St. Augustine says, it's an expression of sin. It comes out of economic depravity. That's where slavery emerges. It comes out of the matrix of economic depravity. So people exchange, there's a transaction that occurs between freedom and security. You sacrifice
that is
freedom
incorrect.
to gain security. And so slavery always comes back when poverty is left to such extremes. But Islam practices war slavery, the taking of war
What the
booty.
hell does that mean?
It means
practices
that
war
you
slavery.
believe if there was a jihad that was established by a proper Islamic caliph and you're victorious over your enemies, you could have people as slaves. You could have this young, beautiful Christian sister as a slave. You could own her as a person and sell her and have sex with her. That's the reality of Islamic teaching, and that's why it's reprobate, and that's why you should stand up to Islam and stand up to Islamization. And that's why, as Christians, we have a better example in Jesus. Because Jesus said, I have come to set the captive free. That's what Jesus said. I'm going to show you.
Before you answer, let me make something clear. First of all, right?
Can you Google, bro, show me where Christ said, I've come to set the captive free.
All right. First of all, you made a claim that slavery only happens when basically a country's broke. When a
Let's just
country-
move away from the uncle, because
You understand the Holy Bible?
You claim that slavery happens when in a country when the country is basically broke, when it doesn't have enough, infrastructure, economy, and the economy's not doing great.
Yep.
People sell their freedom rather than try to find jobs, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, in a country, let's just say the UK, just as an example, right? 500 years ago, the UK was conquered by, the Germans, let's just say. If the Germans conquered the UK, killed majority of the men in the battle, right? There's going to be a good third or 2/3 of the women single and without a husband, right? And there'll be a lot of children and whatnot. They won't have any way to feed their families. The only way for them to make money or income is to go into servitude Servitude to who? To the conqueror. The ones who can probably give you a job, maybe take care of their house,
I've got it,
You know,
thank you.
help their
Yeah.
wives. That's what the servitude that we believe in. Not, oh, you're in chains and you know you sleep here with your hand tied up like that. We don't believe in that stuff. That's not Islam. Islam says offer the people you've conquered servitude, jobs, livelihood, protection, shelter. That's what you're offering them.
So let's be clear. What we have heard in the 21st century, despite our great advancements
still happens today.
in
It still
abolishing the
happens today.
slave trade, we've heard someone try to justify slavery again. We've heard someone try to justify the practice of slavery. A man that can't even admit that Muslims practiced slavery for 1400 years.
No, I
Kidnapping
won't admit
Christian
to it.
children
I won't admit to it
and
because of
forcing
those-
them to be slave soldiers and sending them back to fight their own mothers and fathers. A man that admits that Islam permits the sexual rape of slaves. Now,
You can
ladies and
use all the
gentlemen,
words you wanna use.
we showed where Paul abolishes slavery. He said, no longer as a slave, but listen to Jesus' own commands. In Luke chapter 4, reading verse 18 and on, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release for the captives.
You know what, let me
The
make this sound-
captives is a reference to slavery. And Christ is here to proclaim freedom for the captives. And that is why for 2,000 years Christians have been fighting against the slave trade, whilst for 1,400 years Muslims have been practicing the slave trade.
So who are the people that took Africans to America?
Muslim Arabs. No,
Who?
Muslim Arabs.
Took them to America?
No. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
So to America, yes, that was Europeans. And you condemn that, right?
Of course I do.
Do you condemn the Arab slave trade that took Africans into the Middle East as sex slaves?
Yep.
So he condemns Muhammad's teaching.
I don't do that.
He condemns
Wait,
Muhammad's
one second.
teaching.
Listen, 1 second. Let me like try to make it easier for you to understand
Yeah.
where I'm coming from. Yeah? Look, Arabs have been doing the slave trade for longer than the West, probably. Longer than the West. Now,
True, Wasim says. True.
that is because
First
the West
intelligent comment
was
he's ever
more
made.
underdeveloped than Africa. It was more underdeveloped than Arabia. It was more underdeveloped than Asia. Now, all these other lands practiced it, not just Arabs.
Yep.
Everyone practiced it.
Everyone practiced it.
Now, the understanding of what slavery is
Yep.
where me and you are, you get me? We're going left and right.
We're really not.
We're misunderstanding each other because
What's my definition of slavery?
was the slavery in Asia the same as the one in
What was
in
my
America?
definition of slavery?
Anyone who owns someone.
What I
Anyone
said
above
was,
someone. That's-
no, and I didn't. You see, you weren't listening. I'll tell you again
anyone who
what
can
my
buy and sell.
definition of slavery is: when you can buy and sell another human being. And did we not give you a hadith where Muhammad sold 2 black slaves? Did we not show you that? Yes, we did. So that's the definition that I'm using. And I'm using something that Muhammad did as my definition.
No, but you're
So we're not
equating
talking
that-
about different categories of slavery. We're talking about the Islamic one.
Islamic slave. What is Islamic? Listen, you've equated Arab slave trade to an Islamic one. Can you tell me how that's the same thing?
So it's a great question. Arab slavery and Islamic slavery.
It's going on much longer than Islam.
So here's what we've got. The problem is that Muhammad enshrines in Sharia law slavery, the buying and selling of human beings, the sexual slavery of female captives. That is what Muhammad enshrines. And yet, he doesn't want to do that himself.
No, but I've asked you
He
a question.
condemns it when the Arabs did it to the Africans. The Arabs did it to the Africans because Muhammad said do it, and he's saying it's wrong. He condemns it. So that means he's condemning Muhammad. The difference between Arab slavery and Islamic slavery is there's just more rules about Islamic slavery than Arab slavery in pagan times.
Oh, that's the difference?
Yeah, there's more rules.
That's it.
Yes, that's the difference. Essentially, it is the same. It is the buying and selling of human beings as property.
Where can we procure, in Islam,
Thank you.
Islamically, because you know so much about Islam, right? Islamically, where are we allowed to procure slaves?
In the market.
In the market.
Muslims are doing it today in Sudan. Slaves are still being sold in Africa. Black Africans
got to
are
do with
still
Islam?
being sold in an Islamic republic
Somalia
that
doesn't sell
says it
slaves.
follows Sharia law.
Somalia is also an Islamic republic. We don't sell slaves. So your point refuted right there. It's not
Slavery is practiced in Somalia.
Islamic. Where?
Literally just said in Somalia.
You said Sudan.
There are still slaves in Somalia. There are
said
still
Sudan.
slaves in Sudan.
Okay, where
There are
is
still
Somalia?
slaves
You're
in
telling me about my
Mauritania.
country.
Still
Hold on.
slaves there in
Hold on.
England.
You're telling
There
me
are
about my
still
country.
slaves.
there in immigrant.
And it's illegal.
They're illegal immigrants.
And
They treat
Wasim,
themselves like a
the
slave. They are
difference
the proper
is
slave of this
that
time.
slavery
They get
is
themselves
illegal
like
in
the
Europe,
Atlantic is
but in
different.
the Islamic
They can
world,
use the sea.
slavery is still legal.
No,
And that's the difference between Christ's example and Muhammad's example, is that when you follow Jesus, you abolish slavery. When you follow Muhammad, you legalize slavery.
This man talking about the morals of these days. But what happened? Muhammad,
No,
1400.
no,
we finished.
I'm talking
1400 years
about
ago.
the morality
There is no
of Muhammad.
to work. You
That's
need
who I'm
someone to
talking
after
about.
the time.
The morality
If you are rich,
of
you need
Muhammad.
to after you.
Tell me,
There
is
no
Muhammad
work,
the
there is no
example
job.
that you should
Who
follow,
stands at the
Wasim?
desert? Only
Wasim,
the desert.
is Muhammad the example you should
There is no
follow?
chance of work.
Is
There is no
Muhammad
chance
the
to work
example
like
you
now.
should follow, Wasim?
You compare
And
it with the morals
Walid,
these days. You
my
know?
apologies,
You
Walid. Is Muhammad the example you should follow?
Yes.
Including when he owned slaves?
Yes.
There you go. There you go. I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you the truth.
Muhammad who
No.
had encouraged
JC.
us to be slaves. Slaves was abolished
Did
at the
Jesus
time.
own a slave?
How's a Muslim
Should
treated
we
with
follow Jesus? Yes. Therefore, should I own a slave?
No!
So that's the difference between following Jesus and following Muhammad. Then correct him. Correct him. Correct him.
Look, I have a question for you.
Go on.
In the Bible, does it say that you're not allowed to have a slave? Or that you should free them if you see them?
So we've got the example of Paul. Paul is... No, you asked a question. Yes, so allow me to answer. Allow me to answer. Allow me to answer. There's no point asking a question if you're not going to listen to the
you
answer.
have the floor.
Right.
Go ahead.
So, the church is built on the apostles and prophets. That's what it says in Scripture. So we take from the prophets, we filter them through the apostles, and then we follow what comes out of the mix. Paul was an apostle. He freed the slaves. Onesimus was a slave owner. In the book of Philemon, who was the slave owner, Onesimus, the slave, was sent back to his slave, not as a slave. He was a slave, but he was sent back not as a slave. Christ said, I have come to proclaim freedom to the captives. That term captives is an Old Testament term. It refers to slavery. And Jesus said, I have come to proclaim freedom to the captives. In the New Testament, it lists as those who are going to hell, those who capture slaves.
But funnily enough, either your Bible contradicts itself or one of them is a lie. Now, look, in the Bible, doesn't it also say that a man who is a slave owner, who, punishes his slave,
Yep.
doesn't get punished if that slave doesn't die in the same day?
Right, you've asked a question. Allow me to answer. He's absolutely right. The Old Testament does have a passage about the punishment of slavery. But what Muslims always do not understand about the Christian faith is the concept of Old Covenant and New Covenant. One second, let me finish. The verse that you're quoting is part of the Mosaic Law. Ask any Christian if the Mosaic Law is Old Covenant or New Covenant. They'll say it is Old Covenant. The New Covenant has no concept of slavery. It talks about the idea of us being set free as captives. Christ came to set us free from the captivity to sin. this inspired Christians to set slaves free. And they were doing so from the 1st century, the 3rd century, the 1st century, 4th century, 5th century. That's when the Byzantine Empire stopped slavery. Slavery re-emerged in Europe after Islam emerged in the 7th century.
That's a bold claim. That's a very bold claim. In Europe, the French,
Yep.
yeah?
Yep.
Do you know about Charlemagne?
Yes.
Did Charlemagne have slaves in his court?
Yes, he did. Do you know about... Wait, hold on one second. Do we all agree that there are good Christians and bad Christians?
Well, that wasn't what you asked.
Right, one second. The fact that a Christian owns
It's
slaves
funny you're saying that though.
Let's
when I say
wait.
there's good Muslims and bad Muslims, you don't want to hear none of
and
that.
the best
You don't wanna hear
Muslim
it.
is Muhammad, right?
Of course.
And he owned slaves, did he not?
No. Tell me
Lie.
Who's his slave?
We sold slaves.
No. You said he owned slaves. Who's his
He
slave?
permitted slavery.
Look, you said.
Did he permit slavery?
Are you
Did he
taking
permit
that back?
slavery?
Are you taking that back?
Right, so now let me answer your question. So he talked about Charlemagne. Let us talk about Charlemagne. Charlemagne owned slaves. All this proves is that in this aspect of Charlemagne's life, he was a bad Christian.
also proves
It
that
doesn't
Mecca had slaves
prove,
before Islam.
it does not prove that Christianity permits slavery, only that some Christians practice slavery.
So when we say
1 second.
Muslims after Muhammad did it because
In Islam, in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia has practiced slavery for 1400 years. The first time slavery was abolished in England was in 1066. The Muslims only abolished slavery because the West forced them to do so
when was that?
in the 1900s.
The West forced us.
The West forced
Are
the
you
Islamic
talking about
world
after
to
World War
abolish
II?
slavery.
Are you talking
When,
World War II after?
when was slavery abolished in Saudi Arabia? 1960.
I did not know that.
Now you know.
No, listen.
Now tell me, if Islam, if
No, one second.
if
My point-
Islam,
Bob,
if
that's-
it, well, 1 second, if Islam abolished slavery at the time of Muhammad, how is it that it didn't get stopped in Saudi Arabia until
for the
1960?
same reasons you said that Charlemagne had slaves.
Right,
There you go.
because they were bad Muslims, right?
Some of them were bad.
So the 4 rightly guided caliphs were all bad Muslims. Bingo. And that's the problem, you're trying to
Hold on,
free
hold on. 1
Islam
second. 1 second,
from
1 second.
slavery, and you can't do it. You just can't
Before
do
you
it.
go there, Bob, do you have proof that under the 4 caliphs, the first 4 caliphs, there was slavery?
Yes.
What's your proof?
When they captured women, they had slaves.
When they captured women. That's very vague. Did they
Oh,
have
yeah,
slaves?
yes, they had slaves.
Was there like any names that
they
you
had
know,
slaves.
or like-
We can find hadiths
to
of we can find hadiths of them owning and selling slaves.
This is what I'm trying to say, Bob.
Are you-
Having this conversation.
Just put it
let's
on
make this
camera.
point.
Are you saying that the 4 rightly caliphs never had any slaves?
Yes.
Right. We're going to prove him wrong.
Sorry?
We're going to prove you wrong.
Go on, prove it. Look, first of all, what I want to make clear to everyone here is that in Islam, there is no term slave. That's just a translation. The actual thing is servitude. I've explained that to you like 5 times by now, right? This servitude is not the same as the servitude in Christianity or anywhere else. We have rules and conditions for the servitude in Islam. Meaning, we treat people with respect and kindness, we clothe them, we feed them, right? We put a roof over their head, we even pay them in some cases. And they are allowed to go free. If they go to a court, what slaves do you know in history that can go to a court and free themselves? Can you tell me that?
Okay. Let me just find something.
Because I don't understand. In Christianity or any other part of the world, in the whole of history, there's never been a time where a slave could go and appeal for his freedom. There's never been a time.
So, Abu Bakr was the caliph after Muhammad. He was one of the rightly guided caliphs. Yep. So let's just look at this, because Abu Bakr also had slaves. Bear with me.
I've stayed there way longer than I needed.
Do you need to go?
I do. Can we make this the last point then, if you don't mind? Then I'll go after this.
Right. I'm struggling to find exactly where it is. Listen. So, most of the slaves liberated, this is from Wikipedia, which I accept is not the best source. So we'll need to get some further research to see where the person's put it into Wikipedia. So I accept that Wikipedia is not the best source, but we can trace back why the person has put it in this. Most of the slaves liberated by Abu Bakr were either women or old and frail men. When the father of Abu Bakr asked him why he did not liberate strong and young slaves who could be a source of strength for him, Abu Bakr replied that he was freeing the slaves for the sake of God and not for his own sake. In other words, Abu Bakr was not freeing all the slaves he owned. It means that he had slaves. He had slaves.
You just answer yourself.
You're not listening.
No, wait.
Why didn't he liberate the strong and young slaves? Listen.
He frees
Why
slaves.
didn't he liberate strong and young slaves?
One of them is Bilal. Is he his slave?
It's disputed whether Bilal was freed at the time of Muhammad.
No, he was. You know that slave Bilal. He was beaten. He was putting stone in his body. Who saved him from that? Huh? And he picked from his own pocket, and he told him, "Go, you are free." You're such a liar.
No, bro. You're lying to yourself.
No.
You can't free Islam from slavery.
Listen.
You can't separate slavery from Islam, and that's why we must stand up to Islam, and that is why being a disciple of Jesus is better than being a disciple of Muhammad.
No, he frees slavery. He frees slavery.
Bro, it was written. It's his. His.
Don't lie. Say the truth.
So, bro, it was a real pleasure talking to you. Let me give you a gift. I'd like to give you a gift. This was a very pleasant conversation, and I appreciate your time. Yeah. So, bro,
Can you clarify that one point?
do you have a Bible, bro? Bro,
Bible.
do you have a Bible, bro?
He was
Bro.
lying about Abu Bakr.
Okay.
He was lying about the Prophet. You have to
No, I showed you from your own sources. I showed you from your own sources.
We believe that, but don't lie. He shouldn't lie about the Prophet. Why he shouldn't?
Never stopped a Muslim lying about Jesus.
No, when you're fasting.
Never stopped a
and if
Muslim
you
lying
can't
about
fast,
history.
You can't fast. You free slave. In time of the Prophet, you free a slave. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
But you've got to own a slave to free them. And that is the logical inconsistency of the Muslim
What
argument.
would you have done, Bob, if there were slaves around you and you wanted to free them? How would you have freed them?
In the same way Christians are still freeing Muslim-owned slaves today.
In what way
We
is that?
buy them. We buy them and set them free.
Hold on. You not hear what you just said? Say that again out loud for the camera,
Yeah.
please. Say that again.
So, Christians in the 21st century are going into the Islamic world and freeing Muslim slaves. Now, these charities do that by going and buying the slave and then setting them free.
Okay. So when
No.
Muhammad does that,
No.
he's an evil
Do these charities have
warlord.
the power to
But
go
Christians
into those
can do that.
countries and force the issue? No. They have to work within the economy established by the Muslims. The very fact that these Christian charities can go into the Muslim world and buy slaves and set them free is because Muslims are willing to own slaves and sell slaves.